Hello and welcome to The Time of Telling. I'm Mark Walker, and this podcast is based on my unpublished manuscript, The Time of Telling, John Star Cook and the Word of One Tarot. Now, the previous episode left us at the point where I was saying that all of the pieces were in place for what was to come, and the first domino that led to what comes fell at around 2 a.m. on Thursday the 15th of November, which I've called the Haight-Ashbury defenestration. So what happened was a Coke bottle sailed out of the window at 1090 Page Street and landed on the pavement and smashed at the feet of two cops on the beat. These two cops called for backup, and then 4 police entered the back door of 1090 illegally and carried out a search. They arrested Vince Delviso for possession of marijuana and took him to Park Station, Golden Gate Park Police Station. Later that day, there was a hastily arranged anti-fascist rally and march, which began in the 1500 block of Haight Street, proceeded to Park Station, and then returned to the Haight-Ashbury intersection. As the anti-fascist rally and march noisily passed the Drug Store Cafe, Michael Bowen and Alan Cohen sat sipping coffee and observing. The Drug Store Cafe was a former pharmacy. When the pharmacy closed down, the new owners called it the Drug Store Cafe. But after some time, the pharmacy's board objected to the name, and it was changed to Drug Store. Anyway, they had been discussing the upcoming law change whereby the final step would be taken to make LSD illegal in California, and they were wondering how to protest this change. The anti-fascist rally and march, although justified, was a futile exercise, they surmised. Another angry protest, this time against LSD proscription, would be equally futile. There had to be another way, a more beautiful way, where the demonstration itself would be of love. Bowen considered the new law to be against the fundamental principles of the US Bill of Rights, a beastly act, in fact, due to go into effect 6 October 66, the number of what he lately termed the ferocious beast incarnate. With such symbolism being presented, Bowen approached the matter as he had been taught by John, to see the symbols and to use them in acts of magic. Over the weekend, he set about composing a prophecy of a Declaration of Independence. The document's first paragraph uses language suggestive of the nation's foundational documents. It declares the people have the right to expand their consciousness, and that to secure these rights, we, the citizens of the earth, declare our love and compassion for all conflicting, hate-carrying men and women of the world. Below the document is a statement. The first translation of this prophecy into political action will take place October 6, 1966, in brackets, 666, the mark of the ascension of the beast, bracket. The date Californian law prohibiting the possession of LSD comes into effect. The day of the fear-produced legislation against the expansion of consciousness. At 2 p.m. in the Panhandle at Oak and Masonic, we will gather and walk to the Park District Station to affirm our identity, community, and innocence from influence of the fear addiction of the general public, as symbolised by this law. The document was completed in time for inclusion in the first proper issue of the Oracle, which was published Tuesday, 20th of September, which I'll show you just here. So here is the cover of the first issue, the first proper issue of the Oracle. We'll just quickly run through that. Still kind of like a conventional newspaper. And on the back page, we have a prophecy of a Declaration of Independence and the first translation of this prophecy into political action, etc. So the event itself, as yet, had not been named. Now, the Oracle presented itself as unambiguously favouring the Leary approach to LSD from the very outset, although this was not without friction. The co-editor of the first two issues, who wanted a regular newspaper-style publication and a wider spectrum of racial diversity, said ideological and personal differences increased, and that the ship was bursting at the seams with discord, with zealous new converts to psychedelics as ideology alienating the others. In that first issue, as well as the back page prophecy, Michael Bowen did a collage entitled One. Now, at the same time, the idea that Michael had come up with regarding a new religion with LSD as its sacrament came into being, the League for Spiritual Discovery. The public face was Timothy Leary. Leary launched the new religion the day prior to the Oracle coming out, announcing at a press conference in New York that it already had 411 members and 15 guides. Richard Alpert explains, the League was an idea that was created by Michael Bowen, as far as I know. It wasn't created by Tim at all. It makes a major difference because Tim never had the plan, because Tim is against institutions and he didn't want to be party to the starting of another big institution. Bowen's idea was to devolve the idea of religious institutions to a cellular level, to register in groups of 6 plus a lawyer, and to fulfill all the legal obligations of a religion. The League members could then legally take LSD in their own homes. If you get caught out on the street, man, that's your problem, Alpert reported Leary as saying. Now, a name for the upcoming Panhandle event was yet to be determined, although over the weekend a name came, the Love Pageant Rally. But there is no indication who put these 3 words together. If a workers' rights rally is a call for workers' rights, then a love pageant rally is a call for a love pageant. We want a love pageant. What is a love pageant? A love pageant would be a performance, a spectacle, a show, a visible demonstration of love. On Tuesday, the 27th of September, Bowen and Cohen convened again to further plan the event. They wrote, firstly, to the Parks and Recreation Department for permission to hold their gathering. To whom it may concern, we are planning a love pageant rally on October 6, 1966 at 2 p.m. at Panhandle Park between Masonic Avenue and Ashbury Street as described in the enclosed announcement. we would like a permit for our gathering. There will be no food or wares sold. Our party will be a celebration of community awareness and joy in communion with an international fellowship of those interested in the expansion of consciousness. Your advice would be appreciated. Thank you. Sincerely yours, Citizens for a Love Pageant Rally of October 6, 1966. They also wrote to Mayor Shelley. Sir, opposition to an unjust law creates futility for citizens who are its victims and increases the hostility between the governed and the governors. In the case of LSD prohibition, the state has entered directly into the sacrosanct personal psyches of its citizens. Our Love Pageant Rally is intended to overcome the paranoia and separation with which the state wishes to divide and silence the increasing revolutionary sense of Californians. Similar rallies will be held in communities such as ours all over the country and in Europe. You are invited to attend and address our rally. Thank you. Sincerely yours, Citizens for a Love Pageant Rally of October 6, 1966. Now, mid-afternoon on that same Tuesday, a 16-year-old black child, Matthew Peanut Johnson, was shot 3 times by a white cop while running away from a car in Hunters Point, a predominantly black area. A few hours later, rioting erupted, and at first the police merely cordoned off the Hunters Point Peninsula from the mainland. However, rioting spread to the Fillmore district. A state of emergency was declared, a curfew set in place, and the National Guard was called in. The rioting would last for 4 days. It was a heat wave, and the 200 troops were mainly veterans of the Watts riots in Los Angeles of 1965. In the hate, the Students for a Democratic Society organised a poorly received rally of solidarity with the hate hippies. Now, this is the Berkeley student contingent, and drove down Haight Street with a bullhorn, urging people to stay on the avenue of the psychedelics after the curfew hour and confront the fascist police. The hate merchants carried messages in their lit-up shop windows advising people, for your own safety and for your own good, stay home and off the streets. The diggers disagreed with both sides, each of whom they considered to be using the excuse of the curfew to push their own petty interests. The diggers decided to ignore the curfew and do or not do whatever they pleased. They put up a few scribbled posters: defy the curfew, to notify the community of their alternative to foolhardy confrontations and cowardly acquiescence. A short time after the posters had gone up, Emmett Grogan, chief digger, noticed Bowen standing underneath the marquee at the Straight Theatre, tearing down a poster Grogan had just put up. The Straight Theatre, previously known as the Hate Theatre, was a vaudeville movie theatre that ended up as a gay cinema and was bought by Bill and Hilly Resner, who had the intention of turning it into a music venue that was actually in the Haight-Ashbury, as opposed to the Avalon and Winterland, which were not actually in the Haight-Ashbury area. The Resners spent a lot of time and a lot of money on making this happen, but every new renovation they did was not up to city standards, and they had to make new changes to meet the new demands. And just quickly, I just want to point out the provenance of my copy of the Oracle facsimile. I got in touch with Reg Williams from the Straight Theatre, who put me on to Country Joe McDonald. Country Joe found this copy, passed the information on to Reg, and I was able to buy it. So thanks, Reg. And rest in peace, Country Joe. Anyway, there was a confrontation between Emmett and Michael Bowen. "Take it easy, Emmett," said Bowen. "We didn't mean anything. We just have a different way of dealing with the police, that's all. Why don't you come over to the office and we'll talk about it, okay?" Grogan politely declined. This confrontation seems to have spurred Emmett to begin what became known as the Digger Papers, anonymous, handwritten or hand-mimeographed pamphlets, chiefly written by Emmett, but with some other diggers contributing. For the Love Pageant rally, Bowen decided to call up his friend Janis Joplin and ask her to perform with her band Big Brother and the Holding Company. Bowen had known Janis since 1961, when she came to San Francisco for a brief visit to North Beach. Her parents had packaged her off from Port Arthur, Texas, to an auntie in Los Angeles to get away from bad influences. However, Janis hung out in the beat coffee houses of Venice Beach, in the Venice district, where she met Eric Big Daddy Nord, who owned the Coexistence Bagel Shop in North Beach. And after talking to him, she decided she would hitchhike to San Francisco. She stayed in North Beach for about a month, living off Grant Street, in an alley. Bowen and the beat artists noticed her. Bowen thought she was weird and crazy. She was known to him and his beat artist friends only as the chick in the alley. They kept an eye out for her, brought her food and coffee from time to time from the nearby coffee gallery. One day, as Bowen was going in for coffee, he heard what he thought was the jukebox playing a Bessie Smith record, but no, it was the chick in the alley, who was now not in the alley, but in the main room, astounding everyone without a microphone and without any backup. Janis returned to North Beach in January 1963 and again performed at the Coffee Gallery from time to time. When the Beats were banished from North Beach by the orchestrated campaign of complaints which led to consistent police harassment later that year, Janis joined Bowen and his friends on occasion at the abalone factory. After time at home and in New York, Janis returned again to North Beach in September 1964. She sang for the love of it, drank too much, got a meth habit, and had to go back home to Port Arthur in May 1965. When she returned one more time in June 1966, the action had moved over to the Haight-Ashbury, and she started performing in the basement ballroom at 1090 on 50 Cent Wednesday Jam Night for 20 consecutive weeks. Big Brother and the Holding Company had already formed, and she was perfect as their singer. And just a quick aside about the name of the band. Chet Helms, the manager, was sitting with a group of people, the band and associates. Everyone came up with names for the band, and there was a great big list. When all the names had been put on the list, the names were read out and struck off as people agreed or disagreed. And eventually, this list of names came down to two, which people were unable to separate. These names were Big Brother and the Holding Company, until some genius decided they should be put together, Big Brother and the Holding Company. Anyway, they agreed to appear at the Love Pageant rally. Michael also knew Jerry Garcia and asked him if the Grateful Dead would perform, and they agreed. It was one of their first free outdoor concerts. The day of the beast rolled around, Thursday the 6th of October. In the morning, staff from the Oracle and the psychedelic shop converged on City Hall in full psychedelic regalia as a delegation seeking to present Mayor Shelley with flowers, morning glory seeds and mushrooms to symbolically turn on the mayor. At 2 p.m, the gathering began in the panhandle of Golden Gate Park at Oaken Masonic. People had been asked to bring the colour gold, photos of personal saints and gurus and heroes of the underground, children, flowers, flutes, drums, feathers, bands, beads, banners, flags, incense, chimes, gongs, cymbals, and joy. There was no need to ask anyone to bring any LSD. At that time, Bear had been providing a steady supply of the stuff for 18 months. Bowen read out his prophecy of a Declaration of Independence. When in the flow of human events it becomes necessary for the people to cease to recognise the obsolete social patterns which have isolated man from his consciousness and to create, with the youthful energies of the world, revolutionary communities of harmonious relations to which the 2-billion-year-old life process entitles them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind should declare the causes which impel them to this creation, and so on. Tom Wolfe, who was staying at Bowen's pad, was writing the electric Kool-Aid acid test. And from the book by Tom Wolfe, a head named Michael Bowen had started it, and thousands of them piled in high costume, ringing bells, chanting, dancing ecstatically, blowing their minds one way or another, and making their favourite satiric gestures to the cops, handing them flowers, burying the bastards in tender, fruity petals of love. Oh Christ, Tom, the thing was fantastic, a freaking mind-blower. Thousands of high-loving heads out there messing up the minds of the cops and everybody else in a fiesta of love and euphoria. Even Kesey, who was still on the run then, had brazened on in and mingled with the crowd for a while, and there they all were one, even Kesey. The Oracle reported on the day. Lunatic protest demonstration, a celebration to demonstrate opposition to legislative repression of chemical mysticism. The panhandle packed with beautiful people, ecstatically costumed and handing out flowers to friends and FBI agents. Let's see if there's any photos. The Love Pageant Rally. Wrong book. Anyway, there's photos of the Love Pageant Rally. Afterwards, Bowen and Cohen were speaking and were joined by Richard Alpert. Cohen suggested they should do it again. Bowen agreed and predicted a huge turnout. "What would you call this, Alpert?" asked Cohen. "It's more than a rally." "Well," said Alpert, "it's a hell of a gathering. It's just being, humans being together." "Yeah," said Bowen, "it's a human be-in." Marcia Thielen walked up to Alan and said, "We are not dismayed, laws will change." "Well," said Bowen, "we'll just have another rally, only bigger, and the next time we'll bring all the tribes together." They all agreed it was a great event and that it could be replicated with 10 times the people, a gathering with no agenda other than people existing together, being together as humans. The sit-in, as a form of protest, had first emerged in the US in the 1950s and continued through the 60s. The be-in was the perfect name for the event. Back at his studio, Bowen had set up a call to John in Cuernavaca. In his meditation room, there was a telephone jack, and as he hauled in the telephone, as he and Cohen talked, and he phoned John, he told John how well everything had gone and how beautiful the day had been, and that they had an idea for a human be-in along exactly the same principles. John was intrigued by the name of the event, be-in, quickly inserting his G force into the be-in and coming up with begin. Why did John attach such importance to the word begin? This is something we'll look at in the next episode. So thank you very much for watching. This is the time of telling.